Hey, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Desi from Clean Air Partnership, and I'll present to you today our Climate Accountability Toolkit, a roadmap for municipalities. First, I wanted to start with land acknowledgement. Excuse me. Clean Air Partnership is a Toronto-based organization, and we acknowledge that the land on which we operate is the traditional territories of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and now is home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. In the next 1 minute, I wanted to show a short video where we can learn more about the Anishinaabe folk teaching.
Ani, it's that beautiful time of the year, Degwage or fall. Here's some Anishinaabe fall teachings to help you on your journey. Degwage or fall is our time to prepare for the long winter ahead. This means the harvesting of our food and medicines. There are so many foods and medicines either only available in the fall or this is our last chance to harvest as things become very scarce in the winter. Things like waterfowl hunting, our monoman harvesting, moose hunting, deer hunting, and countless medicines. The season of fall is also expressed on our medicine wheel as belonging in the western direction, and it's in the western direction that carry the teachings of adulthood. As adults, it's essential we learn how to take only the good things from our youth and nothing that can harm someone. And the season of fall works the same way as our youth is expressed in the east and south directions, or spring and summer. When you're working on the land this fall, reflect on the spring and summer and think about how to only take good things with us into the winter. Look to our trees as an example. They take on so much throughout the year, and come fall time, they drop all their leaves, and the only thing they take with them into the winter is new growth. I hope that helps. Miigwech.
Thank you for watching. Okay. Starting our official part of our webinar, and so everyone can be on the same page. What is climate accountability? This is taking ownership of decisions impacting climate and transparency on greenhouse gas emissions, actions for net zero, challenges, and monitoring progress. So in our toolkit, we have 5 on-ramps that we suggest that bring you to climate accountability. And before I forget, I'm going to share in the chat a link to the toolkit so you have it handy. So I'm going to go in details for each of these on-ramps, starting with climate emergency declaration. Climate Emergency Declaration provides a powerful statement of intent and municipal commitment to addressing climate change urgently. By declaring a climate emergency and committing to climate action, municipalities are taking the necessary first step to enhance and protect their communities. These are the benefits of climate emergency declaration: increased awareness and understanding of the urgency among municipal staff, elected officials, and the community; increased municipal climate accountability through public and time-bound commitments; great political will to advance further climate actions or accelerate existing actions; improved collaboration between and within municipal departments, leading to more coordinated and effective actions; and enhance the reputation of the municipality as a leader in climate action. Some emergency declarations also set targets. Most of our CAC municipal members set the target of net zero by 2050. And some of the emergency declaration also outlined actions, for example, to develop a budget and funding strategies to fund climate commitments, or develop implementation teams and hire staff to fulfill climate actions. The toolkit provides more details on the challenges and the tips of doing a climate emergency declaration. But since all of you are past this stage, I will continue with the next on-ramp, which is the climate action plan. So if the emergency declaration is the commitment, then the climate action plan is the roadmap to meet municipal climate commitments. Some action plans are mitigation, some are mitigation and adaptation, some are corporate or community, or any of this variation, or all of them. Regardless of the scope, here are the components that most of the climate action plans have. And by this point, you may think that this is pretty straightforward, but actually many plans lack the detail and accountability elements that will ensure climate targets are met. So what makes a climate action plan accountable? We suggest 5 key aspects of what makes a climate action plan accountable, and I'm going to go in detail in the next slides. Strong governance and oversight. Municipalities can formalize climate governance structures via a climate change bylaw as part of the Municipal Act. We have one example of that. City of Toronto has did this. They updated the municipal chapter code and have a climate bylaw. This is a very strong way to show governance, and it's a leading practice. But other ways to ensure strong governance is clearly defining who is doing what and when. A governance structure should include key internal and external groups to make sure that plans are developed collaboratively, implemented effectively, and tracked transparently. As we learned from the governance, accountability, and implementation series thus far, the 3 main factors that support the strong governance and therefore the implementation of climate actions is Council climate commitment, climate leadership at the CAO and the city manager level, as well as a finance lead. This is the example of the City of Toronto, and we are talking about the accountability and management framework that they use to implement the Transform TO Net Zero strategy. Among the policy process and tools, what I'm focusing now, it's the policy. The first step that they took was the climate bylaw. And this bylaw supports the transparency of the process of taking actions and identifying clear responsibility for those actions. In a way, enforces people to follow procedures and sets the expectations to apply the carbon accountability framework. So it sets the governance. It sets the governance and accountability of the framework. A big part of their strong governance also comes from the use of various advisory groups. As I mentioned in the previous slide, this is an important part of having a strong governance. Their various advisory groups are made of community members, labor union organizations, interdivisional senior management staff, and each advisory group has terms of reference, which outlines its purpose, management process, members, and roles that will guide the city's accountable and inclusive implementation of the net zero strategy. In the toolkit, we also featuring Edmonton's example of governance. Moving on to the next factor that makes a climate action plan accountable, this is the standardized use of data and reporting. Reporting on this data should be transparent, consistent, and accessible to stakeholders, providing evidence of achievements and areas that may require further action. For mitigation plans, a baseline greenhouse gas inventory is needed, and for adaptation plan, a climate risk and vulnerability assessments are needed. For both the inventories and the assessment, they need to be aligned with the existing protocols and standards, as well as with documentation and transparency in the reporting. And periodical updates are needed in order to make sure that the data is accurate and the reporting is accurate as well. The third factor of an accountable climate action plan is the clear outputs and outcomes, where the outputs refer to the results of a specific actions, such as the implementation of renewable energy projects or the enhancement of green infrastructure. And the outcomes, on the other hand, represent the broader impacts and changes resulting from these actions, such as reduced greenhouse gas emissions or enhanced community resilience. A robust climate action plan outlines strategies and actions that should be feasible, realistic, and supported by evidence and best practices. Clear actions with assigned costs, budgets, and human resources increase accountability for implementation. As mentioned before, but it is very important, that's why I'm going to state it again, is that actions have to be taken via engagement of diverse range of stakeholders, community members, businesses, organizations, and experts in an inclusive and accessible way. Also, there needs to be a clear evaluation and prioritization process, considering factors such as cost effectiveness, co-benefits, equity consideration, urgency, and also how well it's aligned with the community needs and wishes for the prioritization of the process. In regards to the financial resources, in order to be financially accountability, we in the toolkit, you can find a little bit more details on kind of like four important resources, which is comprehensive data collection, cost breakdown, financing options and funding sources, and public reporting. A good example of financial accountability is the Whitby costing study. The study provides details on the methodology, assumptions, and data sources that are used. It also identifies how funding sources will be used and how to create a zero carbon revolving reserve fund to finance the implementation of the plan. The business plan was positive. As you can see on the slide, it was calculated that for every $1 invested, there will be a return of $1.66, and this is, as they stated, kind of a conservative way of calculating this. And the last key factor that makes a climate plan accountable is the monitoring, evaluation, and reporting, which takes different forms. Some municipalities use community newsletters, progress reports, sustainability reports, case studies, data dashboards, or 5-year reviews and updates. The toolkit provides a list of resources to support monitoring, evaluation, and reporting efforts. And here is a snapshot of a Brampton City dashboard, as we thought that it's very well designed. Okay, I'm going to stop for a second to kind of let you know that if you have any questions, you can use the Q&A box, or I will have time at the end of the presentation if you want to have more like verbally in the discussion. I think we should have around 15 minutes for that. And for the question in the Q&A, I also have my team behind me to answer questions if I'm presenting at this time. So feel free. Okay, moving on to the climate lens. So the climate lens can be applied in various ways. What we see so far from municipalities, it could be a one-size-fits-all policy, a capacity building program, educational and training models, decisions climate implication, integration of climate change into plans and policies. And we suggest kind of like three ways of how climate lens can be applied, where the identification of climate implications in council reports we see as a gap measure until the climate lens is fully integrated. And the climate integration in municipal plans we see as the outcome of climate lens. They're both currently used for municipalities and effective in identifying climate implications and opportunities. So I'm going to go in a bit more details now for each of those. So again, to be everyone on the same page, what we mean by climate lens. Climate lens is the deliberate consideration of climate change in the beginning and across all municipal decision making. This is the capacity of every municipal staff to be able to consider climate implications in their everyday work and decisions that they take, and how these decisions have positive or negative impact on greenhouse gas emissions or climate risks. It helps to identify low carbon opportunities and showcase them to the council. So the benefits of climate lens is in long-term planning. Having climate lens allows municipality to consider the future impacts of their decisions and make informed choices that are resilient, adaptive, and sustainable. Here we provide an illustration of what this looks like. It's an example from a discussion paper that Houghton region did during their official plan review. And here you can see the comparison between temporal scale of planning and temporal scale of environmental implications of decisions, and how certain planning has much larger implications. The other benefit is coherency and consistency. A climate lens provides a standardized framework to consider decisions and how they impact climate action plans and targets. And this standardized framework it's helpful in having to report in a similar way and then track that. Cost savings. It makes sense that if you have a climate lens and a municipality can see the future impact of their decisions, then they can adjust their decisions in order to avoid potential costs associated. And the climate accountability, because having a standardized framework will support the standardized reporting, which enhances transparency to the final decisions, keeping municipalities accountable for decisions that could advance or hinder the climate goals. So here's an example of Climate Lens tool. This is our example, Clean Air Partnership tool. We developed it with you, with your municipal input. Work started on this in 2019, and just before COVID 2020 is when we finalized it and launched it. And some of you had used it. I will share a link to that tool shortly in the chat. But it provides a preliminary qualitative understanding of whether municipality decisions will affect, where municipal decision will affect climate through greenhouse gas production or be affected by climate through increased exposure to temperature or precipitation. It's meant to be for all staff that take decision, and it was very basic when we created it, but also it was one of the first tools that was available back then. Now we are considering and we are thinking what would the Climate Lens 2.0 would look like, and if there is a need from our CAC members on that tool, please elaborate and free to use the chat and comment on that. And if there is a need for Climate Lens 2.0, how this look like. I know that a lot of municipalities are taking this initiative in their own and developing their own climate lens, but we are here to support if there is a need, and we can discuss further how we can help you and how we can update this tool if needed. Moving to the climate implications reporting and tools. Another way that can help until the fully integration of climate lens is the use of this climate implications. As I mentioned, we think of it as a gap stop that does the work until the integration is fully happening. To adopt this, dedicated sections in staff reports to council, municipalities typically follow several steps. The first one is the policy development. So the policy, it's needed to outline the requirements for dedicated section on climate change implications in staff report. This policy should define the purpose, scope, and expectations for integrating climate change considerations into decision making. Then it follows up with staff training and capacity building, and also providing a template development. Standardized template helps the consistency of reporting. Lastly, the implementation and monitoring, making changes and adjust it as needed, evaluating the quality of the information provided, track the integration of climate consideration into decision making, and seek feedback from council and from staff who are using it so that it can be constantly adjusted. The toolkit additionally provides existing tools and resources. And another tool is also our tool. And that's not surprise. Most of you know that the way that we work is we hear from you that this is happening, and then or there's a need, and then we jump and then we create a tool. But sometimes it's not. It's lost somewhere, and it's for reasons that we are very interested to know. It ended up not used. In that example, it's like this climate implications reporting. I believe it's because maybe we did a bad job of presenting it to you, but I'm going to use the opportunity and walk you through this climate implications repository. So stay with me as I'm trying to pull it up on my screen. Right. So how do you reach the climate implications repository? You go on our website, council.cleanairpartnership.org. Then under actions, here, by the way, are our other very nice tools, the climate policy database and climate action. But you scroll down and here is the climate implications repository. So a bit of background. When we started working on this tool, we had multiple meetings, and you were probably part of some of these meetings where we worked together on crowdsourcing and putting ourselves in everyone's shoes that is tasked with writing a climate implications for certain project. So we have examples of this, what it came out from these meetings as a crowdsourced climate implications, and we're going to go in one of them just shortly. But I also wanted to show you that we were tracking, and we are tracking, you can find real examples from municipalities that already have this mechanism um, uh, in their climate lens. So they have a climate implications climate implications in their council reports. The three municipalities from CAC members are Houghton Hills, Burlington, and Brantford. But we also went a bit beyond and looked at other examples of other municipalities so that you can use it. The whole idea of this repository is that it provides a, a, a way of how you can use the wording that it's used, and then what we were hoping is that you can copy and paste some of the information and be relevant to you when you need to do the climate implications in your municipality and in your reports. So that was the idea behind it. Okay, so we're going to go through the tree protection bylaw. So in the beginning, we provide a background of what is the bylaw and what is part of. In this case, it's the urban forest management plan and why it's important. Then we go into the climate implications for the risks and opportunities. You see throughout that we don't often have an answer, but we have questions, and we provide these questions that are relevant and that that prompt you to think about and maybe discuss within the department in order to see if it's applicable for the project that you're writing the climate implications. So for the climate risks, of course, there is a staff resources needed to develop and enforce the bylaw, and also what is how to make the fine enforceable. So we say that low fines are not deterrents. Then the need of higher tree replacement rules in order to reduce mortality rate of trees, because we are all aware that there is young trees do not survive, or the survival rate is very low in urban environment. Then coming in climate opportunities and mitigation, here is what I meant. Sometimes we don't have the answers, but maybe these questions are relevant for in your project, and it's good to be discussed. For example, would tree protection bylaw prevent building a new bike lane? On the adaptation side, it's a bit more straightforward. We know that trees are able to adapt to floods through stormwater run and provide other benefits such as reduced heat island effect, improving air quality, mental health, also reducing noise, which is also related to health, share equity and biodiversity. Then we go into preliminary climate implications. Here is where we were able to answer together with you. This was, as I mentioned, we worked together on that in these workshops that we held. It's answering some of these questions, and they're divided on 3 sections. The decisions on the high level questions. So for example, how is this aligned with already existing municipal policies such as municipal climate change action plan or air quality plan, and etc. Then moving to more on the mitigation side, high level questions. So what are the greenhouse gas emissions implications? And then on adaptation, so for example, how does it impact the flooding risk? And we kind of all know that it's just happened that I'm showing you the tree protection bylaw, but it's intuitively, we know that this has a little bit more positive impact on adaptation and mitigation, but we also include other, excuse me, I wanted to show you the other topics, which is inclusionary zoning, carbon offset, and carbon credits. I will encourage you to explore this tool because we want to know if this is something that is useful, and if it's not, we are more than happy to stop putting our effort in this and just focus somewhere else that will be of most value to you. So any feedback is welcome. And we'll have another meeting. I'm planning another meeting where we can go in more details to discuss about the climate lens and the other tools that we have. And is there a need of update or yeah. Okay, going back to my presentation, and I'll stop just for a second to see if any comments or questions are here. Okay, there's a question. The CAPS climate lens tool is not very specific, and our council is looking for something more robust. Can you provide an example of another tool? Well, depending what you are looking for, there is, and probably you're aware, Melissa, of the SSG tool that provides quantification of greenhouse gas emissions related to it's quantifying greenhouse gas emissions from projects. We are still testing it, and we'll see if this can be a potential answer to your question. Okay, I'm going back to the presentation. Climate integration in municipal plans. This, as I mentioned, is an outcome of climate lens. It's from an upstream approach. We have a consultation guide coming up with rationale why and suggested questions to start the conversations to help integrate, help the integration. Traditionally, we have seen the integration happening, of course, in climate change action plans, energy plans, but there is a need to happen in this specific plans. And maybe it should be given a priority for climate change integration, considering the substantial influence of climate change on these plans and their potential impacts on climate change. As you know, we've worked before, and we have a report on integrating climate change in official plans, but also we are looking, and the guide that it's going to come up is going to speak about each of these action plans or plans, municipal plans. I'm not going to go in details now for that. Okay, carbon budget. So a carbon budget is the maximum quantity of emissions that can be released into the atmosphere while keeping global warming within a specific limit. And we know that, and we agree on setting the limit to not increasing the temperature by 1.5 Celsius. But from a municipal perspective, a municipal carbon budget scales down global carbon budget to the community level based on population and other factors, producing an allocated maximum quantity of emissions that can be released by the community. A carbon allocation is added to each proposed project and ongoing operational costs to assess its climate mitigation potential against the municipality's remaining carbon budget. A municipality may spread this total budget over time, creating annual or multi-annual or multi-year carbon budgets, which gradually decrease this as the emissions reduction activities increase. So very tricky here, but also very important is that it needs to allow, whenever you're creating a carbon budget, it needs to allow for this adjustment as we know that with the implementation of certain projects, that it's more carbon intensity project, the greenhouse gas emissions can be larger in 1 year, but then the whole framework needs to allow for the next years the cap to be lower so that it can be balanced, and then at the end of the 5-year, let's say, carbon budget, you still reach your targets. What are the benefits of a carbon budget? Centralized and consistent governance. Municipalities can consistently prioritize, implement, and track annual emissions reductions alongside existing municipal financial budgeting process. A whole of a government approach. The climate action and accountability are spread throughout the government, where all departments are accountable for their emissions. Setting specific emissions caps and regulatory reporting on progress enhances accountability and transparency, and highlights importance of intergovernmental collaboration, emphasizing how municipalities need to be supported by higher levels of government to achieve their climate goals. These are the steps for implementing carbon budget, establishing the baseline emissions and time periods for the first carbon budget, then consider how each subsequent budget fits into long-term emissions reduction planning. This is what I meant with the adjusting. During the regular budget cycle, assess the emissions of all budget requests, delegate responsibility for implementing the requests to the relevant municipal entities, present carbon budget for council review, and report on carbon budget. So there is the biggest barrier of this implementation is the quantification of GHG emissions associated with each decisions to the council. And as I mentioned it before as well, but you may heard at this point that SSG in collaboration with Ottawa, Calgary, and Durham developed a tool. We are going to present this tool in January, and so hopefully you'll be able to access and test it. We ourselves are testing it right now, and what we're seeing is that the challenges remain in the sense of it is no tool that every decision maker can use, because as any tool, it requires certain knowledge to understand how to work with the tool. So in this case, it similarly requires some level of GHG quantification understanding to operate the tool. That's our observation. We'll be interested in hearing what you're thinking, and if it's working for you, that's great. But something that similarly to what I discussed about a climate lens and what if we are able to do a 2.0, what this would look like. We also are thinking for the GHG calculation perspective is to provide you a service. We are still thinking how this would look like, but I'm very curious to just a sense here, if you will be interested, if instead of having in-house someone, if CAP has a person that, if CAP has a service that provides this GHG calculations, would that be of interest? And then in that other meeting that I'm planning, we'll discuss further how this can look like, and yeah, and that. So feel free to comment on this. The last on-ramp is the TCFD. So what is a TCFD? It's a framework, it's a process that identifies risks, climate-related risks and vulnerabilities, and then disclose the financial potential associated of those risks and vulnerabilities, so stakeholders understand if they should invest. But it also provides a municipality with a holistic picture, and by understanding the risks and vulnerabilities, municipalities are able to see and then take the steps to mitigate them. The TCFD provides a voluntary framework for organizations to disclose information on their climate-related risks, impact, and strategies. These recommendations are organized around four core elements. Governance defines the structure of the process for overseeing climate-related risks and opportunities. Strategy, how these risks and vulnerabilities impact the organizational strategies, business model, and financial planning. And then identifying process of assessing and managing climate-related risks through risk management. Lastly is disclosure of metrics and targets related to climate change. And when I say it's a process, TCFD is a process, it is because, just for example, the last core element, the metrics and target, is a quantitative element. The first three are qualitative. What are the benefits of TCFD? Enhanced understanding of climate risks. By following the TCFD recommendations, municipalities can assess both physical risks, such as extreme weather, and transition risk, such as policy change or technology shifts, enabling municipalities to make informed decisions and take appropriate actions. Improved risk management, reducing financial impacts, and better protection of municipal assets and infrastructure. Enhanced financial planning, identifying investments needs and allocate resources accordingly. This can contribute to more effective budgeting, investment decision-making, and long-term financial sustainability. Stakeholder engagement and trust. TCFD reporting helps municipalities communicate their climate-related risks, strategies, and progress to stakeholders, including residents, businesses, creditors, and regulatory bodies. And alignment with global standards. TCFD reporting aligns municipal reporting with globally recognized standards and frameworks, and this benefits with the consistency and comparability in reporting, and therefore it can be a benchmarking between municipalities, which is a great way to move forward. This is the process going through the TCFD. The first step is research the TCFD recommendations to understand the four core recommendations and associated recommended disclosures. The second step, assess current alignment with TCFD via the TCFD maturity assessment framework. We provide a link to this framework. Progress is generally categorized in three phases of maturity: getting started, evolving, and highly interested. Third step, develop a governance and implementation team, and it has to be a cross-functional team, usually involving asset management, finance, climate action planning, with oversight from senior staff, executives, and council. Identify I'm on the fourth step, identify and evaluate climate-related financial risks and opportunities. This talks to the data sources, physical climate risks, and methodology for assessing and organizing these risks. Then the fifth, determine the materiality of these climate-related issues. The toolkit, in the toolkit you can provide definition. You can access definitions and guidance around materiality. Six is develop a plan to manage climate-related issues. This is a whole. I have another slide on that. Here, actually, I'm going to jump to it. So in order to develop the plan, you kind of like it's understandable, but there's like 7 points. The setting the GHG emissions, absolute scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions intensity, then transitions risk, physical risk, climate-related opportunities, capital expenditure, financing or investments, and then price on each ton of greenhouse gas emissions used internally by the organization, in this case by the municipality, and proportion of executive management remuneration linked to climate consideration. The last step of the process is integrate climate disclosures into financial reports in a way that it aligns with existing relevant municipal financial reporting standards, such as those established by the Public Sector Accounting Board. So the tool provides much more detail for each of this process, as well as provides example from City of Toronto and Montreal on their TCFD efforts thus far. This is the last slide. Putting it all together, a combined approach for climate accountability. The 5 on-ramps are interrelated. Climate emergency declaration provides the commitments. The climate action plan is the roadmap for addressing the commitments. Climate lens ensures that all municipal decisions align with climate goals, while carbon budget establishes clear emissions caps and tracks mechanisms. And the TCFD framework enhances financial accountability, aligns financial strategies with climate objectives, and provides reporting standards to support year-over-year progress tracking and comparison. Together, these actions create a cohesive framework that maximizes municipal effectiveness in tackling climate change and increasing overall accountability to climate action. You got this, and we're here to help you in every step. Now, I would ask you, I don't know if I can unmute all of you, so that we can have more kind of like a discussion rather than just questions. Let me see if I can do this. Feel free, you don't need to talk. Feel free to ask also your question in the chat or in the Q&A box. That's also absolutely fine. If you have any questions. If not, feel free to explore and go and use this toolkit. Any feedback is back. Any feedback, it's welcome. Any feedback in regards to providing edits will be welcomed on the following week. So if you have something that you think we totally missed, please email us, and we will be able to incorporate this feedback. But we could like only for the first week, so until next Wednesday. Otherwise, any other feedback will be welcome. I don't know also if anyone from my team has something to share at this point or to add. No? I mean, I'm more than happy to give you back the 10 minutes from the 1 hour that we booked. If that's the case, thank you very much for joining us. And stay tuned for more of our upcoming webinars and workshops. Okay, well, I think that's the case. Enjoy everyone the rest of the day.